We have now covered some theories of stress responses, how stress affects our body physiologically, and the effects of chronic stress. In this video, we will look at a few of the methodologies health researchers employ to study stress. First, let's talk about more survey and naturalistic means of studying stress. We already discussed one measure, the Schedule of Recent Experiences, that attempts to measure stressful life events. Participants in studies retrospectively indicate how many of certain stressful life events have occurred to them over the given time frame, typically a few months or a year. Researchers then look for correlations with other factors in that time frame, such as frequencies of illness, changes in behaviors, or other psychological outcomes. These stressful life events inventories also allow researchers to apply average values and significance to certain types of stressors, thereby creating a sort of ranking system. Criticisms of this method point out that there is a lot of variability in the emotional response to these stressors. To get a better sense of the individual, many researchers utilize self-report surveys in which participants respond to Likert-style questions about their current or past levels of stress. For example, the State Trait Anxiety Inventory, known as the STAI, comes in two forms. The state-based version, which assesses a person's anxiety and stress at a particular moment, perhaps due to the situation, as well as the trait-based version, which assesses a person's general tendency to experience stress as a factor of personality. Many researchers also examine outcomes related to experiences of daily stressors, such as people experiencing homelessness, victims of social or relational abuse, and groups experiencing oppression. For instance, growing research is examining racial stigmas in the United States and has shown the effects of racial trauma, that is, the reactions of people of color and indigenous individuals to ongoing racial discrimination. This racial trauma can come from both overt and implicit racial stigmas and is correlated with mental health issues, utilization of health resources, and decreased physiological health. This research has prompted new methods of addressing race-based stress, such as developing culturally informed healing practices, updating research methodologies to incorporate greater diversity, and urging public policy interventions. So, the previous methodologies were more descriptive, observational, and correlational. However, many researchers want to directly understand cause and effect relationships between stress and health. Therefore, they need to utilize experimental methodologies. For one, many researchers utilize what are known as stress inductions or acute stress paradigms. These are experiments that generate stress for the participant in controlled environments. One example of a physiological stress induction commonly used in research is the cold presser task. This involves the participant submerging their hand in a bucket of ice water for a period of time, usually about 60 seconds. This experience is quite painful, but causes no long-term tissue damage, and so is considered safe for participants. However, the participant's body doesn't know this and goes into fight or flight mode quickly. Blood pressure rises, concentration breaks down, and ability to perform normal tasks suffers. Go ahead, give it a try at home. Another common acute stress paradigm involves more psychological stress. The Trier social stress task requires participants to give a 5-minute interview in front of a panel of judges who are trained to give no nonverbal feedback. No mm-hms, nods, smiles, or anything. It is sort of like what it feels like to be a professor in front of a room of bored students. This is surprisingly stressing, and many people make it 60 seconds before they break out in sweat. Afterwards, you have to do a mental math test of counting backwards, which inevitably people do terrible at, given their mental processes are beginning to shut down as cortisol fills their bloodstream. Finally, many researchers are directly interested in how our bodies suffer from disease and illness when stressed. Rather than wait for stressed people to become sick, these scientists bring the illness to the participants. The caged monkey with the flu is a perfect example of these kinds of disease induction. Participants will be injected with a virus or bacteria and then either surveyed about their current stress or put through an acute stress paradigm. After the virus or bacteria has time to spread, the researchers will then look to see who came down with the illness. This kind of research is a major focus of psychoneuroimmunology. This is just a fancy term for research that examines how psychological functioning interacts with neural processes and hormonal release via the endocrine system to influence immune system and health. Remember those athletes who recuperated slower and vaccines not working for stressed individuals? Those were the work of psychoneuroimmunologists. Those are some of the main methodologies used by stress researchers. Next week, we will discuss how people cope with stress. But first, let's end this week on a positive note. The last video here takes a bit of a more positive approach to our psychological and physiological response to stress. Hope you enjoy.